Recording live in the Lucky Number 7 Lounge, this is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, a.k.a. the Baller on a Budget, and this is episode number 56, Billionaires and Baseball. We're going to bring you an update on the Las Vegas A's. We're going to dive into some news stories we thought were interesting. And of course, we're going to bring you that all important drink of the day. But before we could do any of that premium content, we have to welcome in the founder of Dine, Drink Travel and Dine, Drink Vegas himself. Yes, of course, I mean the high roller formerly of the High Plains, the leader in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer, the man who is always waiting on that limo to take him away to his next luxury destination. Of course, I mean Bill. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, John. How are you, brother?
I am, it's been a long day, but I now have a beverage in my hands, and it's going to get better. How about you, good sir?
It has also been a long day, and when we are no longer recording and our listeners don't have to listen to it, you and I can compare notes on who had the longer day. But in the interim, we should probably tell our listeners about this cocktail.
Yes, we should. So tonight's drink of the day is the Billionaire cocktail. So this recipe calls for 2 ounces of bourbon. The original recipe called for Baker's 107 proof. An ounce of fresh lemon juice, half an ounce of simple syrup, half an ounce of grenadine. The recipe insisted that you get the really good stuff with pomegranates, preferably homemade, and a 1/4 ounce of absinthe. All of that goes into your cocktail shaker, shaken up like a crying baby, strained out into a cocktail glass like a martini glass or a coupe or a Nick and Nora, served up with a lemon wheel. Bill, what did you do to this recipe and what do you think?
So I didn't have any Baker, so I used the Maker's Mark Barrel Proof, which I think is an excellent whiskey in here. Otherwise, I made it exactly to spec, save for the fact that I didn't feel like making my own grenadine, so I just used whatever commercial grenadine I had. The other thing I had, so I actually went to the liquor store. Last night, at your advice, I put a star anise whole clove into. You said 4 ounces of vodka. I did 3 ounces of vodka to make it a little bit more concentrated. I then went to the store today and I tried to buy some absinthe, but they wanted $50 for it when I was only going to use half an ounce ever, and that didn't seem like a good investment. But no, It is basically a 2-spec drink. How about you, John? What ingredients did you put in here?
So I went with Wild Turkey, which we profiled on the last episode. And no, listeners, we do not have a sponsorship with Wild Turkey. We are for sale, but nobody's bought us. Just so happens I have a big handle of it.
We are not for sale. We're for rent.
Right.
We're for rent.
Our soul is not for sale, but we will.
We're basically Afghani warlords.
Yeah, we will pawn with the intent to buy back. And then my simple syrup and my grenadine are both sugar-free version on account of the beatus. And I did use an actual absinthe. I will say, Bill, that, just flavoring a little bit of vodka with some star anise and maybe some other herbs gets you absinthe adjacent. I will say, if you ever do, and I'm not saying you have to, if you ever do buy the bottle, I promise you over the life of the podcast, I've got enough recipes that call for a little spritz there and a 1/4 ounce there. You'll go through the bottle eventually. But at any rate, Bill, what's your impression of the cocktail?
So I like it. It is not one of my favorite cocktails we've ever made on this show, but I like it very much. And weirdly, I'm trying to decide what I think about the star anise, which is not normally a flavor I enjoy. And I don't love it here, but I don't hate it either. It's a good drink. I'm trying to figure out where this fits in my rotation. Yeah, and mostly I'm trying to decide what I think about the star anise. And you know what? Maybe eventually I go on and actually buy some proper absinthe. But the star anise is quite pronounced. Like you can tell, and I only added the half ounce in there of it, right? So it's not much. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I think. How about you, John? What is your take on this drink?
I love this thing, but I'm a fan of licorice flavors. And the absinthe that I am using, which I don't remember what brand right now, but listeners will be able to see it when I put the picture up on Twitter, It is definitely star anise forward, which is why I was telling you soaking some vodka and star anise would get you in the ballpark of what I'm drinking. Now, different absinthes have different profiles. Some are not as licorice forward as this. The one I buy happens to be. But I really do enjoy this. This is essentially a whiskey sour, but the grenadine and the star anise flavor to me really do marry well together. I think it's a perfect drink for rolling into fall. And you and I both live in places where we have to put air quotes around fall because our daytime highs are still in the low 90s or mid to upper 80s. Occasionally we'll have a day with a high of 79. This is what people in Massachusetts still call summer. But it's, the God turned the broiler off and it's not triple digits. I think this is a perfect fall cocktail, a change of season cocktail. I wouldn't crave this all year round. But for tonight, it's about perfect.
No, this is absolutely a fall cocktail. Speaking of, I'm kind of wondering what would happen if I threw a few cranberries on top of this and let those float for a while, because it's already a red drink anyway. And I'm thinking like a little bit of a zing of cranberry might be a nice change to this.
Ooh, I like the way you're thinking. The other thing I was wondering is I've got a barrel-aged gin in my collection. And I wonder if I subbed out the bourbon for some barrel-aged gin, what that would do. I don't know if the absinthe and gin would get along or fight each other, but I suspect this weekend I'll find out.
I think that is outstanding. And so my wife does not drink gin, and she's not a big bourbon fan either. But I think there are several ways where I could swap out the base liquor here and make it something she would at least try, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something there. And my wife didn't want to try one tonight. She wasn't feeling adventurous, but I think my wife could pretty happily choke one of these down. Usually she's a rum or tequila girl, but I think she might go for this one. So Bill, the reason I picked this particular cocktail is purely because of the name. As you might imagine, it takes a billionaire to make baseball stadiums happen. So our main topic tonight is going to be exactly that. Now, we're going to start with this, and then we'll get to the inevitable rebuttal from Scott from Vital Vegas. Everybody's favorite fish wrap in the Las Vegas Valley, the Review-Journal, reported on Bally's grand plan for the complex around the A's ballpark on the Tropicana site. And here's from the story, quote, Bally's Las Vegas will be built in phases eventually feature 3,000 hotel rooms, a 2,500-seat state-of-the-art theater, and a 500,000 square feet of retail, dining, and entertainment space, including a casino. That, according to Bally's. The complex will be built above street level with the main area of activity, dubbed the podium, accessible from ground level via escalators, stairs, and elevators via the walkways from Excalibur and MGM Grand. According to Bally's, the area will feature a 9-acre plaza that will lead fans to the main entrances of the ballpark and the northwest facing portion of the stadium. Buildings will be built on top of portions of the plaza. So, Bill, let's just talk about those plans for a moment. What do you like? Did you look at the rendering? Any thoughts?
So my first thought, based on the rendering, is that it's going to be one crowded 9 acres of land. Mm-hmm. Like I don't see how all that stuff physically fits there. But assuming it does, I love the idea. Like you and I have been excited about this baseball stadium for a while. And I love the idea of a hotel being there. I love the idea of it being connected to the MGM and the Excalibur, which means it's functionally connected to the New York, and to the Luxor. Like there are several hotels that'll be convenient to get to, all MGM properties. I'm not sure why you need the arena there in addition to the baseball stadium. That seems superfluous. unless you're going to have a concert and a baseball game at the same time. There's no reason to do that. But the base plan, I love very much. How about you, John?
Yeah, I did too. I think one of the things they did to ease the congestion on the lot is the hotel towers are going essentially on the two. If you think about this from standing on the corner at New York, New York, and looking catty corner over, the two hotel towers are going to go on those back two ends of the lot, and they're not adjacent to one another. They're you've got a square lot, and they're on two different sides, and so that sort of opens it up like a book. I would think check-in is probably going to have to be in the back end. Your entrance is going to have to be from the back, and the front desk is going to have to be in the corner between the two towers. And I think that's a pretty neat and efficient way of doing things. I wonder if they'll take the opportunity to brand the two towers a little bit differently, maybe give a more affordable option and a more upmarket option. I don't know. I think the idea that some of your casino things are going to be happening essentially, the ballpark's going to be sitting smack dab in the middle of what would normally be your casino floor when we think about a normal property. It's going to be a fascinating space. I think that upper level is going to have some walking around open air value, even when there's not a ball game going on. So I'm very intrigued with all of this. I think it looks like everything I would want it to be. I definitely would be willing to stay at Bally's, although I'm a New York person, and being able to get to a ball game from New York sounds good. So, Bill, yeah, I'm super excited. I love this plan, and I hope it happens, which leads to what Scott had to say. Bill, do you want to read that, or you want me to take that?
Actually, I've got one last thought that you just sparked. So one of the struggles with running an eatery at a baseball stadium is that you've only got 81 days a year when it can be used. You just sparked the thought. There's no reason in the world you couldn't treat the food court at the baseball stadium as the food court for the hotel. And you'd have some challenges with how ticketing would work. But if you're thoughtful about that design, you can make it where if there's not a baseball game on, you could go get your street nachos from the baseball stadium at the hotel, and vice versa, right? Like there's whatever. I think there's some real possibilities there.
Yeah, I do too. But then you run into the question that we know Aramark has the exclusive contract for concessions inside the ballpark. And that's a decision the A's made. Does Bally's want to negotiate a deal with Aramark to allow Aramark's venues? You know, if you think about it, you could essentially, if you were very creative on where you put those dining venues on the concourse, you could build those kitchens where there's those fold-up walls on either side. So on a game day, you close it to the outside, you open it up to the ballpark, and you sell to patrons of the ball game. And when there's not a game, you close that and open the other side to patrons on that nine-acre walk area. But doing that necessarily limits other food partners that Bally's might want to work with. So I feel like there's some business decisions that have to be made there. And having some bad flashbacks to some regrettable Aramark food service meals in college, that doesn't particularly excite me as a dining option, but I'm assuming they do a better job than the sports grill of the small liberal arts college I once attended 30 years ago. So yeah, I like where your head's at. I'm just not sure whether or not that's what comes to be.
So that is fair. And in addition, there's a question of whether this happens at all, because as Scott at Vital Vegas posted on his Twitter, X, whatever Elon is calling it today account, quote, "We're observing a large-scale delusion in real time, a manufactured, orchestrated, and largely unchallenged narrative untethered from reality. Reminder, neither the ballpark nor the resort are funded," end quote. And at the bottom of his tweet is a picture of the same rendering that John and I have been talking about. So, folks, to be fair, a couple of things are true. One, Scott is better informed about things Vegas than we are. And two, we've made this point on this podcast for 3 or 4 episodes now. Scott's of the opinion that this project never ultimately happens. And I disagree. I think the project does happen. I think the question is whether Scott Fisher, the current owner of the A's, is the one who brings it home. And I will concede the point that maybe this doesn't happen in exactly the way the artist's renderings are on this picture. But yeah, that is Scott's opinion here. So John, let's start with your baseline opinion. Does something like this project happen in some time frame like 2028?
Yes. And we've talked about it before. I do think Major League Baseball is going to have to find an investor to make this happen. And again, Bill and I are just two fat Southern white guys with a podcast. We don't know anybody. We don't know anything. I am advocating openly for Mark Cuban to get involved. Major League Baseball froze him out years ago. They didn't want him as an owner. Mr. Cuban, on the odd chance you had nothing better to do with an afternoon but listen to a random Vegas podcast, I think they'll take your money now because Major League Baseball needs this to happen. They need somebody to come in. John Fisher may be told, you're going to sell a portion willingly or we're going to exercise the best interest of baseball clause in your contract and yank this thing away from you. I don't think Major League Baseball can afford for this project not to happen. So the stadium at the minimum, yes. Now there's a separate problem where I do have a little hesitancy because I think John Fisher's money problem gets solved. It just may involve him losing his team. Bally's also has a money problem. And where I think Scott may be more accurate because he knows Vegas better than we do. What Bally's wants to do is fundamentally a Vegas thing. And he may have a point there because I don't know that the same investor, Mark Cuban or whoever, that bails out the A's and takes on ownership to make the ballpark happen necessarily wants to be in the hotel and casino operating business. I think that's a very short number of people, and Mr. Cuban has never seemed like that was his forte. So I don't know about the hotel. I feel very confident the stadium happens.
So I'm confident that a hotel eventually happens. For one thing, I can't imagine that Bally's would have sold the land and given up their extremely expensive piece of real estate without some incredibly specific plan. The other thing is, while Scott is 100% correct, there isn't a comprehensive financing deal in place. There are too many pieces of a financing plan. Like you referenced Aramark earlier, who's already committed 9 digits worth of money to this project. The state of Nevada has already contributed 9 digits of money to this project. John Fisher may not have as much money as he'd like, but he sure as heck got more money than you and I do. Yes. So there is some money there. There are too many bits and pieces of this, and as you said, Major League Baseball is committed. Now, as for the hotel, like I said, Bally's, I can't imagine would have done this without some sort of a plan. And so, fine, let's say Bally's falls through. If you've got the chance to build a hotel in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip, okay, not the heart, but so heart adjacent to the Las Vegas Strip, in a place that you can be mathematically certain will be sold out for 81 days a year and is close to the New York, and several other the MGM for, all the other days of the year. Somebody builds something there, right? Like there's no way somebody like economics is a thing which exists. Adam Smith may be dead, but would roll over in his grave if somebody missed that kind of a commercial opportunity. There's just no way that it doesn't. The other thing is that if this is a hoax, it's all a hoax, I tell you. If this is a hoax, gosh, this is the most elaborate hoax I've ever seen. It's kind of like the time I told Rachel, sweetheart, marry me. I promise it'll be a lifetime full of happiness where I'll make lots of money and everything's going to go perfectly all the time. And then I just maintained the lie for 20 odd years because she was expecting it to come true sometime really, really soon.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I will say I do love Scott's prose in this tweet and this particular passage. A manufactured, orchestrated, and largely unchallenged narrative untethered from reality pretty much describes my dating life in junior high. So good on Scott for for wordsmithing that. But like you, yeah, I think something's got to give, and this happened. So we just spent a lot of time disagreeing with Scott. Shall we steal some news stories from him after we just said he's wrong about baseball?
I don't know that we have any other choice. So our first news story is from, wait for it, Scott at Vital Vegas, who reports rumors that Excalibur laid off some financial staff last Friday, a sign of ongoing issues with MGM Resorts. So John, you and I reported over the last like half a dozen podcasts about the inferior customer service experience with a different MGM resort with the W. And it seems like that is going around. So, John, do you expect to continue seeing stories about MGM laying people off, or is this how long does this story continue?
So that's a great question. I think the corollary to that is, when do we see tourist numbers get better? And I didn't put it on the run sheet. I guess I could have, and we could do a whole episode on this. Multiple other tourist destinations, San Antonio, Los Angeles, Miami, are also beginning to see a downturn in people visiting. So it's not just a Vegas problem, and it's not just a high-end problem, because let's be real, I love me some San Antonio. Luxury it ain't. Wonderful it is, but luxury it ain't. The tourism industry is in trouble right now in America. And I don't know how much staff that MGM or any other operator can bleed, because you have to run the balance of, you cut employees so that you can keep operations going. But if cutting employees hurts the customer experience and you're already struggling with customers as it is, you can definitely get into a vicious cycle here. And I'm not sure at what point you just say, we're going to lose money, but we got to have staff. We got to stay open. We're going to make the best of it.
Yeah, I think we're about at that point where they've cut about as many people as they can.
Yeah, I think you may be right, but it is a concerning sign that things have not gotten better. And I apparently have a critter in my recording studio. So if you hear any clicky clacky sounds, there is some creature behind me. I don't know what variety. All right. Scott also shared that the Morimoto's at MGM Grand will be closed through the month of October into November for a refresh. Bill, you and I are not the biggest celebrity chef people. Have you ever dined with Iron Chef Morimoto?
Couple of times. Turns out Morimoto was not in the house, because of course he was not. But the first video I ever posted on the Dine Drink Vegas YouTube channel was of some of the seared beef there, and Morimoto's is phenomenal, and it is not a cheap meal. It is quite expensive, but it's cheaper than some other celebrity chef places. It is certainly cheaper than Le Cirque. You can have a lovely meal there for $100 or less, particularly if you're not super cocktail happy. Yeah, Morimoto's is phenomenal. That space is going to be hard to refresh since it's currently open to the rest of MGM. But I love that place. I will absolutely go back. So, John, have you not been there?
I have on a trip with your brother-in-law, Mark, God rest his soul. And Mark and I had been having quite the Vegas adventure. So I'm a little bit fuzzy. I think I liked it. Decisions were made before we got
It is phenomenal.
Yeah. We had made some choices.
No, it is a great place.
I remember.
Well, I'm just glad that it's not closing.
Yeah. I kept the meal down, and given the state I was in, that's a mark of good cooking.
That is. Well, in other news, multiple sources are sharing that national treasure Dolly Parton has canceled her Vegas residency due to health issues. Some of those sources are reporting that there's a procedure going on. And on the one hand, I am deeply saddened. On the other hand, I wasn't actually going to go. And John, do you have any idea how old Dolly actually is?
I don't know, and I don't care. Whatever her age is, she pulled off a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader uniform within the past calendar year. That's impressive. Hats off to Dolly and to her plastic surgeon. And may whatever doctors are caring for her now, The fate of America rests in your hands. Take care of Dolly.
Absolutely.
So Eater Vegas noted the opening of Symbiotique Wellness Bar. Good Lord. A casual health food spot has opened to the Fountain Blue, begging the question, who goes to Vegas for health food?
So I do not, but there have been any number of times that I've been in Vegas where having like a healthy meal wouldn't have been a terrible choice, which is, where'd you say this place is, John? Like in the Fountain Blue?
In the Fountain Blue.
So yeah, as with so many things, I think that'll be the death of this. It's not close enough for many people to just walk by. But if it was in like the Bellagio or someplace more central, yeah, it actually might make it. Because sometime if it's the third day of your 4-day trip to Vegas and you wake up and something like a smoothie's not the worst idea in the world as you process the end of your trip. So no, people may not go to Vegas for health food very often. I don't know that there aren't some people who would consider it every now and again.
I'm going to take the opposite stance here. I'm going to say that this opening is one more piece of evidence that Fountain Blue has completely misunderstood the Las Vegas market. I think they thought they could bring actual Miami to Las Vegas. And here's what they don't understand, right? Because Fountain Blue is Miami to the core. Caesars understands that Paris is not trying to be real Paris. MGM understands that Luxor is not trying to be real Luxor. Real Miami may well be cocaine and vodka all night long, an indulgent steak at night before going to the club and dancing and burning 5,000 calories, and then having a vegan healthy breakfast and lunch to atone for your sins while you go to hot yoga to get your hangover out of the way. That's Miami. That is not Las Vegas. And people that go to Vegas don't want real Miami. They can't afford that. And here's the thing, real Miami's in the United States. For a lot of Vegas visitors, it's equidistant from Vegas. If they want real Fountain Blue Miami, they'll go to that. What you got to do is give a fake Miami that appeals to the people who are actually in Vegas. And you got to remember, this is a town where Park MGM and the Plaza are having a hard time getting people to gamble in a smoke-free space. The majority of Americans quit smoking 25 years ago. But do you know what Americans do when they get to Vegas? Buy a pack of smokes. People who have not touched a cigarette since Daddy Bush was in office will rebel like it's 1776 if you talk about making a casino non-smoking. People go to Vegas to be as unhealthy as they could be. The Heart Attack Grill is still open. I think this is just proof that Fountain Blue does not understand the market they're operating in, and they're trying to give people an experience that is not what people go to Vegas for. Vegas is the last place in America where you could be as gross and as tacky and as unhealthy as you want to be, and nobody will judge you or even notice. That's what Vegas is.
So do you know what I would have put in that space instead of this if I was trying to be Miami, but fake Miami that fits in Vegas?
A giant Cuban sandwich bar that served 5-foot-tall daiquiris?
I was going to say something not that different from that. Yeah, I'd have put a Cuban place that was rum forward because that screams Miami, but is also something which would absolutely work for the Vegas crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we're not there for a health cleanse. We'll do that when we get home.
Absolutely. Well, in our last story, John, we reported previously on the closure of Carlos and Charlie's at the Flamingo. On September 30th, Fox 5 Las Vegas reported that they had filed notice with the Nevada Department of Employment that they would be laying off 79 employees. Now, it's not happening until November, but still, they filed the formal notice. And this reminds us that changes in Las Vegas come with a real human cost. So, John, I feel bad for those employees. Frankly, I feel bad for the ownership of Carlos and Charlie's. I know that change is, I don't know if it's got to happen, but I know it's going to happen in Las Vegas. Sometimes it works out really well. I wish all those people all the very best. John, how much do you get concerned with the constant churn of places and locations in Las Vegas?
I think for the most part, if you're good at what you do in food service, you're going to land on your feet. So my daughter, who passed away back in January, worked in food service. Food service jobs come and go. You and I have both at different points in our life worked in food service. Jobs come and go, and that's the nature of the beast. I think it's a lot easier for food service staff to take a layoff and keep going somewhere else than it is for the executives. I think that's just the reality of it. Now, when the market in Vegas is down overall, that gets trickier. So I do worry. It's one thing when, hey, we're going to close a venue and go another direction, but business is a booming. It's another thing when, hey, we're going to close this venue and go in a different direction. And oh, by the way, lots of places in town are struggling. But by the same token, we reported 1 or 2 episodes ago that Station Casinos is reporting big profits. Some of the local operators are having big profits. So I suspect the people that want to stay in food service that aren't there, they're going to find new jobs. I think they'll be okay.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I do too. I don't want to see anybody suffer. Not even the customer service reps who were rude to you at the W. I want them to be employed. Maybe not in a public facing job, but I want them to have jobs and, feed their family and all that good stuff.
That is indeed a true thing, with which I suspect my priest would agree if he could get me to sit still long enough to listen to him.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I think that about does it for this podcast. It's going to be a shorter episode, but that's okay because we'll be back in a week with some more stuff. Why don't you tell everybody else where they could find more Dine, Drink, Travel, and Dine, Drink Vegas content in the meantime?
So first, folks, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you would help us out a lot if you would click like and if you would make a comment, because that would help the algorithms, because we've got a quickly growing audience and we would like it to grow more. And if you want more of our content, you can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas, where we have short and focused videos which help you plan your next trip. It is something like a 5 or 10 minute video on a particular hotel room, a particular restaurant, something like that. You can also find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Travel, where we talk about air travel, including the executive lounges and the Las Vegas airport. You can find us on most social media platforms at Dine Drink Travel, and you can find us on Blue Sky at Dine Drink Bill. Probably the most prominent social media platform, though, is X, where we are at Dine Drink Travel, and where I argue with John all the time about any number of topics, including the poop and pour at the Golden Gate. John, where can they find you on X?
I'm on X at Dine Drink John, where I'm happy to talk to you about Vegas, adult beverages, gourmet coffee, and why Jerry Jones is the worst general manager in the history of sports, and anything else you might want to have a conversation about. We're so glad you took the time to listen to our podcast. If you happen to have a friend that's planning an upcoming trip to Vegas that could use our sage wisdom and advice, or a mortal enemy that hates listening to old fat white guys talk about anything on the internet, please share this podcast with them so that you can help us grow an audience. Thank you so much for listening, and until the next episode, happy travels.